When Trey Lance heard his name called third overall in the 2021 NFL Draft, it was a dream come true, not just for him, but for a 49ers fan base that truly believed they were a quarterback away from Super Bowl glory. They may well have been, but Trey Lance was not that guy, and the 49ers can instead be grateful that they got a savior in their last pick in the 2022 NFL Draft who saved them from being a league-wide laughingstock. So, what went wrong, and how bad was Trey Lance actually? San Francisco 49ers fans have very little to complain about, but there has been a heavy dose of drama mixed into these several years of dominance. Trey Lance was meant to be the missing piece on a roster that was ready to win the grand prize, but given San Francisco had featured in the Super Bowl just 2 years earlier, why was he needed? For that, we need to buy a ticket to the Jimmy Garoppolo roller coaster. Garoppolo's tenure in San Francisco started in 2017 when he waltzed into a 1-9 49er team and promptly won them 5 of their last 6 games. He had been learning behind Tom Brady ever since his arrival to the league in 2014, and it appeared that the lessons of a future Hall of Famer had produced a star. The 49ers gladly gifted him the biggest contract in NFL history at the time, despite him having just 7 total starts under his belt. The 3 years that followed perfectly epitomized the Jimmy G roller coaster, with immense highs and devastating lows. He suffered brutal season-ending injuries in 2018 and 2020, but in the one season he managed to stay healthy in 2019, he took the team all the way to the Super Bowl where they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. While the 13-3 record and Super Bowl appearance in that 2019 season would seem to suggest that Garoppolo had a strong command of the offense and was playing at a high level, the more popular narrative was that Kyle Shanahan was doing most of the heavy lifting. What Garoppolo is in fact remembered for is overthrowing Emmanuel Sanders on a deep touchdown that could very well have won San Francisco the Lombardi Trophy. That moment was played over and over again for years to come, taunting 49ers fans with what could have been and seemingly confirming the narrative that Garoppolo was the handicap to Kyle's marvelous system. Perhaps with that moment etched into the brain of Kyle Shanahan, combined with the endless list of injuries, the Niners decided it was time to select a quarterback that matched the quality of the 49ers offense. To ensure this, they traded 3 first-round picks to move up from 12th overall to 3rd overall, which allowed them to select Trey Lance, an FCS prospect with only 17 college starts under his belt. In total, Lance had attempted just 318 passes and was coming off a COVID-affected 2020 season in which he played just 1 game. For context, Brock Purdy played in 48 games and attempted 1,467 passes before transitioning to the NFL. In that game played in 2020, Lance completed 50% of his pass attempts for 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, while also rushing for 143 yards and 2 more scores. You see, the intrigue with Lance was that he was, in theory, a rare dual-threat weapon. In the 1 full season he played at college, Lance threw for 2,786 yards and 28 touchdowns to go along with 1,100 more yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. He also had the insane stat of not throwing a single interception. He was a fascinating dual-threat quarterback who could run right through you, while also challenging every pocket of the field with his powerful arm. Firing to the sideline from the far hash and delivering deep bombs to the end zone were no issue for this guy. He was a truly exciting prospect. There was definitely a lot to be excited about, but the lack of experience was a cause of great concern. At least it was for most. Let's remember, these 318 pass attempts were not against good teams at the FBS level. These came against FCS teams who were far inferior to Trey Lance's North Dakota State Bisons. Yes, he had done some amazing things in college game, and the full athletic package gave him a very high ceiling, but the lack of playing time also meant an incredibly low floor. He was going to need time to develop and had a lot to learn. So, of course, the 49ers, in the hunt for a Super Bowl and with the roster ready to go, decided that he was the guy for them. Yeah, weird, right? On paper, you can understand why. The idea of having to defend against Kyle Shanahan's system and a quarterback who can beat you with his legs is a nightmare for anyone, with Lance's arm also forcing them to protect against the deep ball as well. It's a concoction of offensive tools that would baffle even the best defenses in the league and surely lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl. The only problem was the 49ers only got the bad bits of the Trey Lance package, not the good bits. The first bad bit they had to deal with was the lack of game time. Everyone knew he was a raw product, which meant it came as little surprise when the 49ers 49ers announced they were keeping Jimmy G and sticking Lance on the bench to open the season. He managed to find his way onto the field with the odd play here and there, completing his only pass attempt in Week 1 for a touchdown against the Lions before scoring a rushing touchdown on his first of 2 touches 2 weeks later against Green Bay. From an efficiency standpoint, Trey Lance was smashing it out of the park, but the coaching staff still wasn't seeing enough to properly hand over the reins. Another Jimmy G injury resulted in Lance receiving his first proper taste of action in Week 4 against the division rival Seattle Seahawks. It was a suspect start, darting his first pass at George Kittle's feet and airmailing Deebo Samuel on the second. Lance did boost the box score with a long touchdown to Samuel soon after, but this was purely because the Seahawks decided not to put anyone within 20 yards of Deebo on the right side, gladly took advantage of the blown coverage. All in all, it was a very questionable first look at Trey Lance. He looked twitchy and nervy in the pocket, was inaccurate on several throws, and seemed to rifle every pass with enough power to blast through a brick wall. He did make some good plays with his legs, but his mechanics were messy. His field vision and decision-making made him a liability. There was clearly a lot of work still required in order to get him ready. However, with Jimmy G still hobbled by his injury, there could be no time for that. Lance made his first NFL start 1 week later against the Arizona Cardinals. He got off to the perfect start, showing his elusiveness to avoid a sack and scramble for a first down on the first play of the game, before securing another set of downs with his first pass attempt of the game. However, his flaws emerged very soon after when he fired a bullet right over his receiver's head and into the waiting arms of Budda Baker, the Cardinals' safety. It was a continuation of what we saw in his first appearance against Seattle, occasionally flashing good ability as a rusher and finding wide-open targets, but failing to move the offense with any consistency and still seemingly unable to take any power off his passes, resulting in several drops from his receivers. The 49ers would lose the game 17-10, with Trey Lance finishing up with a stat line of 15 completions from 29 attempts for 192 yards and 1 interception, adding 89 more yards on the ground. The bye week gave Garoppolo enough time to recover, and Lance was sent back to the bench for the remainder of the season. He did get another outing in the penultimate game against Houston, showing signs of improvement by completing 70% of his 23 pass attempts for 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Was the 3rd overall pick finally coming into his own? It's at this point that the story starts to get a bit messy, because while Lance was trying his best to become a starting quarterback in the background, Jimmy G was leading the 49ers to the playoffs. And when San Francisco reached the conference championship game against the LA Rams, people were debating why the team had bothered trading 3 first-round picks for Lance in the first place. The 49ers were on the precipice of their 2nd Super Bowl appearance in 3 years, led there by the very guy they were in the process of replacing. Admittedly, Garoppolo wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire, throwing no touchdowns and 2 interceptions across the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. It was still a weird position to be in. Fortunately for Lance, depending on how you look at it, Garoppolo did not get the chance to be the hero. LA defeated the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, and the team once again turned to Lance as their savior. He would finally get the keys to the team in 2022, and surely now the 49ers would be unstoppable. This time, there were signs of improvement. Lance made some nice throws downfield in the season opener against Chicago, showcasing much more touch on his passes and also picking up big first downs with his legs. However, 13 completions from 28 pass attempts for a 46% completion rate, resulting in 164 yards and an interception, tells you that it wasn't exactly perfect. What's more, the 49ers went on to lose the game by 19 points to 10 in the game where Lance was outplayed by Justin Fields, who was taken 8 picks after him. In fairness, the monsoon weather did make it hard to evaluate Lance, but the conditions were the same for everyone, and Fields managed to do enough to get the win. It wasn't an ideal start, but there were glimpses of quality from Lance, which was just enough to keep the 49ers fans feeling optimistic about their 2021 first-round quarterback. That was until 1 week later when Lance broke his ankle 12 minutes into the first quarter. And that was that. Lance's first full season as a starter was over just 5 quarters in. The kid would end the season on the sidelines, which meant across 3 seasons of football between 2020 and 2022, Lance had started a grand total of 5 games. In the 2 years since Since the 49ers essentially used 3 first-round picks on him, he had made 8 total appearances, completing 55% of his passes for 797 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Remember, this is a Super Bowl contending team at this point. After Lance's injury, they would once again make it to the NFC Championship game, making it 3 conference championship appearances in 4 years, and 1 Super Bowl appearance in that time as well. For them to continue performing so consistently, despite Lance being an almighty bust of a pick, is impressive. However, it also begs the question, would they have been able to get over the line if they hadn't given up all that draft capital and instead just drafted some studs to bolster other position groups? As it turns out, that game against Seattle, in which Lance broke his ankle, was his last regular season game for the 49ers. He was replaced by Jimmy G, who was then replaced by Brock Purdy. We all know what happened after that. It's hard to talk about the rise and fall of Trey Lance because the rise never made it beyond the draft. His breakout season in college in 2019 was the only good thing we have seen from the guy, with nothing but failure since. It's unfortunate because he clearly has talent and athleticism buried deep inside him, but the decision to declare early for the draft will likely haunt him for the rest of his life. Who knows what would have happened if he had gone back to college and got some more snaps under his belt. We saw how that benefited Brock Purdy, for example. Instead, Lance flamed out with the 49ers. The 2023 preseason was his one last chance, but even then the odds were stacked against him. Despite the fact that Brock Purdy had suffered a serious elbow injury in the 2022 NFC Championship game, head coach Kyle Shanahan said Purdy would have to melt in practice to lose the starting role. The vibes were certainly off for Lance, and this was confirmed when he was shipped off to Dallas for a 4th rounder during that 2023 preseason. It tells you all you need to know that San Fran felt willing to give him away to the NFC Conference rival Dallas Cowboys. Lance has had a roller coaster preseason in 2024 with Dallas, passing for 662 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also 5 interceptions. With him ranked 3rd on the depth chart, I guess we'll have to wait yet another year to find out if he can get the job done. And for those that are counting, that's now 5 games started in 4 years, dating back to his final season in college. Is there any hope for this guy? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the video, join the Halftime family and check out some of our other videos.